I, 54M, am wondering if it's time to leave my 52F wife of 30 years. I have been married for 30 years, 2 kids, 25 and 27. Had ups and downs. Wife cheated on me 20 years ago. I have never been unfaithful. She begged to come back. Kids were young and we worked it out somehow. Bumped along. We are now empty nesters. Now she is increasingly frustrated with me for small things like me leaving the light on in another room, not wiping the table down correctly and missing a spot. Usually results in a 15-minute lecture. Also for not listening. I try to listen, but her favorite topic is politics, which I am just sick of. Even though she and I mostly agree politically. She spends most of her days and nights on Facebook and news sites commenting and arguing. It makes it hard for me to sleep when someone is texting literally all night. Her average is like 6 hours a day on Facebook. She refuses to work, wants to stay home to provide care for our grandson, whom I love. I have a demanding job and can support ourselves well. But she openly criticizes her in-laws' political views on Facebook, which is our most recent fight. It causes tension when we visit relatives. We are currently in couples therapy, about 3 sessions in, and she is not receptive. Mostly controls the therapy conversation about how she is oppressed and discriminated against. She is Asian. I am sure she has been discriminated against in minor ways over the years. But she completely seems unhinged. I am tired and I don't know if I can go on.
You sound tired and exhausted being with her. So plan what life would be like on your own. Talk to a lawyer or 2 or 3. Get a read on what would need to happen. What your future would look like. You will probably have to pay a lot, including retirement savings. Imagine life on your own. What does that look like? Is that something that you would find more enjoyable for the next 20 years? Some questions you might need to consider would be the relationship with your children, who might get pressure to not see you.
My father left my mom at 55-ish because after their kids, left as grown-ups, the relationship didn't have enough substance to keep them together. He is now, 15 years later, happily remarried to a wonderful woman who I personally think is a much better fit than my own mother. He has relocated to a different country and is extremely happy. Allow yourself to begin again if this is what your heart wants. Life will take its turns, people evolve, and the reasons for being together, or not, change, and sometimes the relationship just grows apart. If you two don't fit as a couple anymore, it's never too late.
If you can't get along, then yes, leave.
Don't be like my parents. Recognize what you are worth, and leave her.
Give yourself permission to start a new life. Be excited. Do not feel guilty. Go for it. She will blame and badmouth you for the rest of her miserable life. So what?
Should have left 20 years ago when she cheated.
You don't even like her, so yeah.
I think we all think of divorce as the end of a happy family, but in truth it is the beginning of finding your happiness. When relationships no longer serve their purpose, then it is time to part ways. A lot of your language tells me that you need to start walking away because you just aren't engaged in the relationship at this point. I don't think anyone deserves to be in a relationship with someone who would call them unhinged. If your opinion of your spouse is that bad, then you need to end your relationship before things get worse.
20 years too late, but no time like the present.
Now that your kids are grown, it's time to do the math. If you divorce and she takes you to the cleaners, can you still live and retire to a comfortable life? At your age, you need to be thinking seriously about retirement and spending the last years happy, because it doesn't sound like that's going to happen with her around. Imagine the next 20 years living in peace and quiet, doing and living whatever and wherever you want versus listening to Facebook Karen complain about the butter dish.
You're both unhappy. It's better to at least try to enjoy the next 30 years than keep doing what you're doing now.
Try a separation. Spend time away and see if your differences are as big as you think. Nothing could be worse than making a huge mistake after 30 years.
She begged to come back. Gonna stop you right here.
Sounds terrible. I'd leave that situation.
Dude, it's okay to be done. You take some shit for the family. I get that, but at this point in the game, you shouldn't be miserable. I would make your intentions known in therapy, give it a few sessions to set in, and then put a plan together. Honestly, it doesn't have to be divorce. It can be anything that you can figure out that gives you some peace and a chance to be happy. Maybe separate residences or whatever, or maybe divorce is the way, that is your call. But there is no reason to still be falling on that sword.
She cheated 20 years ago and then didn't. After cheating, like you and your wife are living different lives, you moved away from her and your personalities are very different. Bad choice not to get divorced. You stayed for the kids, and the kids grew up in a far apart, loveless household. They are more likely to have marital and relationship problems. They grew up with two people who didn't share anything emotional.
To me, it's the constantly being frustrated with you over little things and then lecturing you that says the most to me. The other stuff isn't great, obviously. Being constantly annoyed with your partner isn't a good sign. What it means, to me anyway, is that she doesn't like you anymore. Forget love, there's not even like. That's the death knell of a relationship. My ex-wife started doing this years before we divorced. In hindsight, that should have been the biggest sign to me. And she was like that right till the end, but never was before that point in time. Reality is, she got to a point where she no longer liked me, and generally acted that way. That should have been my sign to end things. Not coincidentally, this was around the time she reconnected very briefly with an ex, for about a week. He was in town, lived across the country. She said nothing happened, I let it go. Hindsight tells me this was when she started seeing me differently, though. Just didn't realize it at the time. Your wife cheated on you 20 years ago, and that was likely her point of no return. She probably also stayed together because of the kids, grandkids, family. It wasn't just you that did that.
Do you really want to waste another 30 years of your life like this? With her like this? Hell, can you waste another year? 6 months? It's time to get your ducks in a row. Time to go live your life.
All I can say is imagine life in another 30 years. Do you think it will get better or more likely worse?
You're asking us if you can when you should be asking yourself how can you not? You know the answer.
You don't have to stay in an unhappy, unfulfilling relationship, especially at your age. Go enjoy your life.
If you do want to work it out, it sounds like you need to find something you both enjoy doing. A hobby. Like golf or hiking or traveling or something you can do on retirement together. Without it, it just sounds like you're holding each other back, and maybe it's time to move on from each other.
My parents have been married for 30 years. They are a little older than you too, 58, 57. If you ask me, they should have divorced 25 years ago. Just leave and live a happy life. Your kids are old enough to understand. They probably felt the tension between you two for years.
Gift her The Chaos Machine by Max Fisher. She's fully addicted and controlled by social media. Maybe it opens her eyes. Maybe she never opens the book. Worth reading yourself.
Social media addiction is a thing. I call the feeling you get from posting hate buzz. People start seeking out topics that give that feeling. Then they start arguing with people. Then they start identifying as victims, and feeling others are taking advantage of them. All of that triggers big emotions, and those emotions become an end in themselves. If you were married to an alcoholic who had made your life miserable, you wouldn't probably be questioning things. But social media addiction isn't a recognized thing. It's just phone time, right? Don't expect an addict to tell you she needs help.
She sounds like my mom, and my mom is Korean. Well, we all are. I don't know what it is with that older generation, but it seems many are very narrow-minded and easily brainwashable with a bit of narcissistic traits inside them. But yeah, I honestly wouldn't know what to do if therapy and communication doesn't work. Maybe just show her this post as a last resort before talking about a possible divorce. I go through similar things as you and sometimes get yelled at for things that aren't even a big deal to a normal person, but to her it's like World War III started and she's right in the middle of it. Things like closing our small bathroom window or drinking cold water from the fridge instead of alkaline, or the type of food I eat. She just doesn't understand that yelling just makes things worse and is only capable of seeing things from her POV only with a very narrow and simple mindset. But if she makes a bigger mistake or forgets major things, it's not a big deal. If you were anywhere near my age, I would say divorce, but I don't know your entire situation. Your kids are grown, so I don't see why not, and move on. Just not hearing her yapping might be enough for me to leave, which is why I spent extra dollar to leave home.
She cheated on you. She disregarded your feelings and thought a few minutes dick was worth more than your relationship. She decided she'd rather make another squirm with pleasure than you. You can't get over this. Nobody can. Leave.
If she has been a stay-at-home wife for decades, you may be on the hook for spousal support for the rest of her life. You will need to quietly talk to a lawyer about this. If she never worked, she does not have much in the way of job prospects now. It could cause you to have to support 2 households. If she did not work, she is not going to get much if any social security if you get divorced, so this could be a problem in a divorce.
The most important thing here is that you don't sound in love anymore. Don't stay, there is no reason to. Make sure the divorce is fair to her. Do not allow her to make it messy and a shit show. She will. Don't fall for it, and move on. Do explain why to your kids, as plainly as possible, because they will have her around bad-mouthing you. Divorce is not a failure in itself. You may have run your course as a couple after 30 years, and that's absolutely fair. You still have quite a few fun years ahead of you.
Talk to a divorce lawyer.
30 years is a long time to be in a relationship, and it's not easy to just walk away. But it sounds like you're really struggling with your wife's behavior and it's affecting your mental health. Have you tried talking to her about how her actions are affecting you? Maybe try to find a common ground and find a solution together. If she refuses to listen, maybe it's time to consider couples therapy. It's not easy to change someone, but with therapy, you can work on your communication and hopefully find a way to make the relationship work. Just remember, you're not alone in this. A lot of people struggle with their relationships, and it takes a lot of hard work to make it work. Keep your head up and don't give up just yet.
Some couples try separate bedrooms. Or just some nights sleeping separately. Maybe that will work for you.
Please be kind. Menopause is a nightmare. Several of the women I know, in their 60s who have gotten through it, describe themselves as crazy. Quote,
Tell her sayonara and move on if you're that miserable.
Menopause. My mother went absolutely insane during menopause. Extreme irritability, irrationality, obsession with phones games. She really changed. I'm surprised my dad managed to cope with her nastiness. It took about 4 years to normalize again.
I find these posts really frustrating. It sounds like you are looking for the permission of randos to find happiness. Do I really have that power? I give you permission.
Life is too short, and she sounds like a bored and miserable person. Your happiness matters.
There's a difference between giving up and knowing when you've had enough.
He also needs to talk to a therapist on his own as well as his kids. They're both in their 20s and deserve to know what's going on and what happened 20 years ago.